Hello, everybody. Welcome to another PowerShell Wednesday. Every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we are live learning about PowerShell together. And in addition to that, if you take in a lot, you want to go back to it. We're publishing the recordings on YouTube now. So check out the PDQ YouTube, youtube.com/@PDQ. And you can follow along with previous week's events. I think last week we had Sean Wheeler. That should be uploaded later today. And in the future, you'll be able to see Steven Judd himself on there. But today we have a very special guest for PowerShell Wednesday, friend, PowerShell community extraordinaire, Microsoft MVP, and just a funny guy, to be honest. You might hear a couple dad jokes here or there. I think people know about you before you're here, but welcome to the PowerShell Wednesday, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It is my honor and my pleasure to be here. And yeah, you probably are the very first person to actually introduce me as a funny guy, because most people that I've talked to, they don't. That's not what comes to mind first.
It's taken years, but you've just eroded away at me. So many of these, so many of but
I'm
it's a special
you,
place in my heart.
I think that it's possible that you're becoming more and more of a dad as your kids age. And so then you're just kind of morphing into my sense of humor.
Yes, it is true that these dad jokes come to me and I'll say them in meetings and I'm like, oh, why did I just say that? But it is what it is, embrace it.
That's right. Well, I was, as I was getting my morning going and trying to focus on work and some other tasks that I had done, I was like, you know what? I just thought of a dad joke. And you want to hear it?
Yes.
Why is it that people don't breathe underwater? It's because to err is human. There you go. Hot off the presses. Huh? That joke is probably an hour old. All right. Have we ruined it? Did the stream end?
No, we're here. We're still here. We're alive. But let's talk about some scopes. What are you going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so this is one of the glorious features of PowerShell that I think people either don't understand when they get started, or even if they kind of get the gist of it, they're not taking a good, solid advantage of it. So I wanted to get into just kind of, here's the baseline for some scopes, here's some fundamental concepts, and kind of catch people up. And since this is PowerShell Wednesday, I've been kind of noticing that we have people that are getting started in PowerShell coming to the PowerShell Wednesdays. So I wanted to kind of set out a clear path for scopes and get it all kind of lined out, kind of scoping the problem. And so, PowerShell has all this built in. So I thought we'd take a look at it.
Let's take that look. You want me to share your screen?
Okay. Yep, we're ready to rock and roll.
Rock and roll we shall.
All right, so what I've done is what we're looking at right now is my PowerShell session. And as you can see, I'm on GitHub, Steven Judd Scopes. So as of right now, all this stuff is out there and it should be public. So everyone can go there if you want to. But if you do, you'll ruin the surprise of my awesome presentation. So let's kind of get into it. And so shout out to Sean Wheeler for my terrible use of aliases. So here's one. I'm going to do LL here. I bet LL isn't on your PowerShell, but it is on mine because I keep code switching between Linux administration and Bash versus PowerShell and Windows versus Linux. I started typing LL out of finger memory on PowerShell. So I was like, all right, well, what is that? What did I do with LL? Where's my get alias? Fill out here. There we go. Get alias LL. This is just a side run. And I did get SJ Unix LL. So I wrote myself a function in order to do this. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds because we're here to talk about scopes, but that's just one thing that I do so that I can LL and get the list. And so now that we're in here, I'm going to do the whole code dot to say, hey, I want you to open up this folder in code so we can take a look at it. And we're going to get this going. All right, so in the scope, there is a concept of global scopes, and that is your root scope. You can't get any farther down than that. So when you open up PowerShell or you open up VS Code and it opens up PowerShell for you in its built-in editor, then you're working in the global scope. And then the idea is that when you're running code or you load functions, they all go in a parent-child relationship. And so I did this super cool ASCII art here. Oh, it's so janky, but I love it. So it kind of gives you the idea that things that are here in the global scope contains everything. And then inside there, when you run a script, PowerShell will set up a script scope for that script. And then in your script, if you have functions, then each function will get its scope as well. So in this particular example, I've got script scope that has 3 embedded functions. And then down here on script scope 2, I have a function that has a sub function. And as you can see, I kind of numbered them like this. Now the concept behind this, and I'm gonna show you some examples, is that once you have all this all set up and PowerShell does it for you, the functions, the aliases, the PS drives, the environment variables, and I'm missing one. Oh yeah, just your general variables. As you build them, the child scope is able to see everything upwards through the parent scope. So like if I am in function and I've got a variable defined in script scope, then function can use it. However, it doesn't go the other direction. Okay, so if you're doing something in script scope and you try to step into a variable in your function, like in function scope 1 or function scope 2, script scope can't see that. Now, there's ways around that, and we're going to talk about those, but I just wanted you to get the kind of concept of that so far. All right, so now ASCII away, let's go to scopes 1A. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let me make this a little smaller so we can kind of see the code.
Before we dive in,
oh yeah,
I have a quick question. So
yeah.
What do you mean when you say they can't see it? You mean it's not accessible to them?
It means it is not accessible to them. That is correct. I'm gonna show you that. So just kind of hold on to that. But what the point is like, if in the function you go into a for each loop, and in your for each loop you say for each dollar item in dollar array, because dollar array is your array, and dollar item. In that function, dollar item and dollar array exist. However, if you go up to the script scope above it, it knows nothing about dollar item or dollar array. That's kind of what I mean. It'll become more clear when you see the code.
Okay.
So let's roll forward a little bit. So the thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of show you some get variable commands. And then I'm going to show you, if you didn't already know this, that scope has local and script on the get variable. So I'm going to hit F5. Hopefully, oh, I did not. 1 second while I sidecar over here and go to screencast mode. And now if I hit F10, yep, okay. So if you're wondering which keys I'm hitting, now you'll be able to see it. So I'm going to run get variable, and there's a lot of variables. They're just kind of poured down here into the terminal window. And so, it's a name value pair for all of these things. And so what I did next is I said, okay, well, I'm going to take those variables, I'm going to measure them, I'm going to select just the count, and then I'm going to right host foreground color magenta so that I can see how many are there in there. And I've got 77. Yay, so I've got 77 variables. All right, so now let's look at the global scope and see how many are in here. There's also 77. Okay, well, let's take the local scope. 77. Interesting. And finally, the script scope. 77. Now, that entire demonstration was to show you that they're all the same. Or are they? Okay, let's run the exact same thing over here in PowerShell. I'm sorry for the black on black. I probably should have stronger borders. Actually, let me do this so it makes it a little easier to see. Okay, we're going to run that exact same thing. By the way, pro tip, if you number all your stuff at the beginning of your names, then it makes it much easier to tab through them than it does if you put scopes-1A, scopes-1B. All right, so same thing here. Since I put wait debugger at the top, it's doing debug in the console in the same way that it was doing debug in VS Code. And so if you've never seen wait debugger before, I can type H for help, and it'll list the things you can do. And these are the ones you'll wind up using the most is step over, step into, step out, and continue, just like you do in VS Code. I like it because it allows you to do it interactively in the shell, just like you can do in VS Code. But what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to do step into. So we can step into this and we'll do get variable. And there's the variables. Okay, so the next one is show me the count of this. Oh, well, I've got 72. Slightly different between VS Code and my PowerShell console here. That's not a big deal. So let's move on. Let's look at the global, 71. Interesting. So one has disappeared where in VS Code it didn't. So now we're going to look at local, 26. Now we're going to look at script, 26. All right. The point is that VS Code kind of treats the entire VS Code ecosystem when you open it up and you get into it as the global scope. And so your script scope and your local scope, all of these scopes are the same initially in VS Code. Okay. Now I know that is if this is the first time you've ever seen that, then it may be a little confusing, and you're like, wait, why is it this way versus that? If you've ever worked with the IDE, or excuse me, the ISE for PowerShell, it does the same thing. And this is what I talk about when I'm talking about polluting your scope, because you can define a variable in VS Code in a script you're not working on, and then that variable becomes available to the script you are working on. And so that's why you have to be careful in VS Code. All right, enough of that. Let's get back over there and see what 1B is. Well, you know what I thought? In this 1A, I'm going to show you this. The measure object select dodge right host blah is repeated again and again and again. I don't like repeating code. So what did I do? I wrote a function to do this for me. Let me close this window here so we can see the whole thing. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do this function outnumbered. Because, you know, when you're doing a bunch of variables, they can gang up on you and outnumber you. So I said, all right, well, let's take the input object from a generic measure info object. And the reason I did that is because get variable I piped it into measure object, and then I piped that into outnumbered. And then I wanted to set a scope just so I could output it into the output. So the number of scope variables is, and then I output it. Well, it's fun to look at the code, but why don't we run it and see what these all do? Okay, so here we go. Now, in this case, it's fun to write debugger through this thing, but I want it to go into the outnumbered function. So I told myself up here in the comments, hey, do F11. This is how I help myself make my presentations work, right? So I'm going to do get variable measure object outnumbered. It bounces into outnumbered. And it says, okay, if scope has been defined and scope is not defined currently, it jumps down here and says, okay, the output of variables is this and is that. Now, if you've ever stepped through code like this and you're doing right hosts and no new lines and whatever, then your output down here gets kind of clunky. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's not exactly awesome, but it's doing it one at a time, and each time it gives you the prompt afterwards. So in this case, I'm like, all right, well, that's fine and all that, but I didn't really want to do it that way. I guess I'm going to do it one more time to show you that once you're in here, I put myself a note for shift F11. This is what's known as step out. It's like, okay, well, I've gotten to this point. Let's shift F11. And now it puts it all together. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but I find that pretty cool. Well, now I'm going to use F10, which is step over. And I'm just going to run through these right quick. 77, 77. There's nothing magic about that. But the whole point of me showing you this way is because this is getting the job done, and this is making it efficient. Because now if I ever want to change the output, I just change my function up here, and I don't have to go through and change each one of these. Okay. Before I move on to 2, any questions about what I've done here?
I have yet to see any questions, but I really like the way you showed how you have a couple lines of code that is working for you and you keep repeating it. Turn that into a function. Everyone likely has some code like that they've kind of strung together, and then you can start building on it.
Yep. Yeah, and the cool thing about me doing the outnumbered by putting granted, it's a contrived example. All of my examples are somewhat contrived, but I put scope global, scope local, just so when I put this out to the screen, you can see them. Well, what if I just ran this thing without doing the debugger? Well, here's what it looks like. Here's my output. The number of variables is 77, number of global variables is 77, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's cool, but let's go back to our prompt here, or a console, excuse me, and we'll do 1B, I believe it is. And we'll do continue because I want it to just run. And now you can easily see variables is this, global is this. So somewhere I have a script local variable that is not a global variable. And here are my local variables. Now, I would then use get variable to go dig around and find out which ones are which. I'm not going to do that right now because that's not part of this presentation. But if you're ever wondering, okay, I don't understand why the variable that I've defined either is or is not working, this will show you why. Usually that's because you've got some scope issue or there's some pollution in there. Okay, so now this is slightly different. What we're going to do here is we're going to define a variable called here, and we're going to call it there, because here, there, sometimes it's everywhere, if you know what I mean. So then we're going to say, okay, well, we're going to say the global variable here is set to this, and then the local variable is set to this, and the script variable here is set to that. Now, the question is, I'm putting here in the middle of my scope, where is it going to be? The only way we're going to find out in this demo is by running this sucker. So I told myself up here, it doesn't matter F10 or F11 because we're just going to be stepping through. So I define here is there. By the way, I've got this little text that keeps popping up over here that shows me what my variables are once they've been defined. This is a plugin. I'm trying to remember which extension it is. It's I can't remember. I'm looking now. Does anyone remember what this one's called?
Inline Values by Tyler the Amazing.
There it is.
Justin ready for that.
Yes, that's the one. Yes, and I do love it so much because it does this. So when you're like, wait, I don't understand, and normally you would have to go down into the console and type and go, here's what it is. It just shows it here. I love it. Thanks, Tyler. All right, we're F10ing on through this, so I'm going to F10 on that. It says the global variable here is set to, let's see what it says, here and there. Okay, that's cool. That's here and there. Yep, that's what it's set to. All right, so we'll do the next one. Here's local, here and there, and the next one in script is also here and there. Okay, that's cool. I debugged it. I'm going to run it again because I want all the output to be the output. Now, does anyone notice anything odd about my output? I did this on purpose too. Okay, because it's not interactive, I'm basically just speaking to you, Andrew. Andrew, do you notice anything odd about my output?
It looks a little multi-lined and kind of weird, I'd say.
Yeah, multi-lined and weird. And for those of you that are not familiar, right host is not an object. It's just straight to the screen. You can't do anything with it. Now, the reason I use it, and the reason I may be a monster for this, but I like the colors. I like to be able to do the foreground this, and I don't want to have to do like Sean showed us last week. If you didn't see that presentation, you should go back and see the recording because it's amazing. But he does escape characters, and he's coloring his shell by doing it that way. I've been doing this a long time. Plus, like I said, I'm kind of a monster. I do it this way. But what it's doing is it's putting out the text, and then it puts out the actual object like this, because it's a name value pair. And then it puts out the next one. Well, because the object hasn't actually changed from get variable to get variable, it just uses the same format again. It doesn't have to re-put the headers on there. So it's ugly. Well, I don't do ugly. All right. Point is, we're still doing this, looking at these variables. So since I don't do ugly, I do it this way. Like, all right, well, I'm going to say get the variable for here in the scope global and go get me the value and put that as magenta down and then do it this way. All right, so it's the same basic thing. I'm just going to run it. I did set it up for debug because reasons, but we kind of get the idea. And so the global variable for here is set to there, and the local variable here is set to there, and the script variable here is set to there. Sweet, it all works. Yeah, okay, so let's go to the console. Oh, by the way, in case you were wondering, Roy Kent. Some of you will get that joke. Those of you that don't, you should learn how to get this joke. I really need a live studio audience, I guess.
I'm one of those that don't get it, so I gotta get it, I guess.
Roy Kent, he's here, he's there, he's something everywhere.
What's it from?
You haven't seen Ted Lasso?
Oh, no, I've seen a couple, but I hear it's like emotional, so I'm like trying to laugh at shows, but it's on the list. I have Apple TV. So.
Okay, it's good. Well, all right. For those of you that got the joke, you're welcome. Let's see. That was 2B, if I remember correct. Is either 2B or not 2B? Yeah, that is the question. So here we're going to go the same exact thing in the console. Same code, same everything. And now we see this. Okay. Now, this is where I pause in the middle of this and I give you Steven's experience and Steven's opinion is that whenever you're writing code, please use VS Code with all the extensions in your tools and awesome. And then when you're running your code, do not use VS Code for that. Go to the console. It will save you some pain because if you're ever doing anything with your code and you're sharing it, which you should be sharing it with your coworkers, your friends, complete strangers, anyone that will talk to you about PowerShell, then you should say, I know this works because I ran it, because they're not going to have your environment when they run it. I mean, I seem to recall Justin Grody saying that you should also do this when you load up your console with -no profile, so that it doesn't have any of your junk in there. It didn't load any of your modules. It didn't load anything. And then you can test out your code that way. And if you want to go even one more level, then you open up PowerShell in a container so it doesn't even have access to your environment, your PS modules path. And so it can't auto load modules that you have installed. That's really, making sure your stuff works and doesn't blow up. So mine blew up because there is no scope global with the variable named here. In VS Code, because I defined it here, and because VS Code puts everything in global for its PowerShell extension, it shows up in global. But over here, there isn't. But the local variable is there and the script variable is there. Now, what's the difference between local and script? Local is wherever you are currently. So if you're in a sub-function, that would be local. And then if that sub-function was in a script, then the script is the script scope. And then as you go up from there, it goes back to the global eventually. Okay, that was kind of a lot in a little bit of time. Any questions on that?
I think they also made a mention of loading PowerShell with no profile. I think you might have mentioned that too.
Yep.
That really resonated.
Okay. Awesome. So next up, we have scopes 3. Now 3 is so important. The 3 didn't get any lettering. I guess 3 wasn't an athlete in high school. All right. Again, audience, something.
What is pollution? Variable pollution?
Variable pollution. Okay, I say variable pollution. It's kind of it's a term I picked up. And so what I mean by that is if I'm working in my VS Code here, like right now, nobody has done a standard variable, this one right here. Okay, so if I go down here and I do $STAN tab, no completion. Okay, once I've run this, I'm going to F8 on this line. Now that I've got it, I can go down here and hit tab, and it's complete. If I go back over here, I'm messing up my my demo on purpose, notice how it has standard variable here. It knows about it. Okay, that's fine when you're in VS Code like that, right? But if I define something in one script and then I forget that I've defined it and I just use it here, this one knows about it now. And that's what I mean by scope pollution, is because VS Code puts everything into global, pretty much, whenever you define it, then you can get some odd results if you're not being careful. It's kind of a word of caution there.
Yep. And I think a lot of people will run into that issue, and it's very confusing if you don't have this context.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so funny part is now that I've hit F8 on this and defined it, if I go over here and look at what's in standard variable, I already have it set as I'm a typical script variable. But we want to walk through this code anyway, so let's F5 it, get it to the debugger, and start walking through. I didn't give myself a little help to tell myself whether I should be doing this with F10 or F11. Well, fun. We're going to do this live then. So here we are defining standard variable. Okay, nothing fancy there. Now here is something new that we haven't talked about yet, is you can define the location for a variable scope. And in this instance, I have defined global. Okay, so here's global variable being explicitly set as global variable. Okay, you can read that in the help. So I'm going to F10 on that, and it jumped me down. Well, what did it jump over? It jumped over a lot of code. I now kind of want to look at this code before I go too far, because I have a test function scope in order to demonstrate this scope. And then under there, I have a test subfunction scope. So I've got my function and my subfunction. And in my subfunction, I'm writing out some lines, and then I'm saying, okay, here are my variables. And I'm going and getting the global variable, the standard variable, the script variable, the local variable, and the private variable. We haven't talked about private variables yet, but we're going to get to that here on this code. Note that this function now collapses into that. All right, so now we're still within the test function scope, and we do the same thing here, except this one says I am a local variable here in the subfunction. Note that in the function. In the subfunction, I didn't define any variables. It's just a subfunction. So then I define a script variable by putting script : on the beginning of this one. And it says I'm an explicit script variable. So I'm now telling this variable, hey, I want you to be in the script scope. Even though it's inside the function of test function, it's going to define it one level up. Okay. Here is a private variable. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but I just wanted to point out that I'm defining it as private, and this is a private variable. Then I write out this stuff. Same thing as what was in the subfunction here in the function. Show me the global, the standard, the script, the local, the private. And at the end of this function, I call the subfunction. All right, so that's the end of the function. I probably should have done this. This is something I typically do. Here's a little live update. I'll copy my function. I'll close my function. I'll go right here and I'll say end that. That way I know when I get to the bottom of that curly brace, and go back down here to the bottom, I know that's the end of that function. Okay, so then I call the function inside the script. Okay, call the function scope, my test function. And then I'm writing out the global, the standard, the script, the local, and the private, again, within the script scope. All right, note how the local and private variables are not accessible outside the function. Well, we haven't seen that yet, but I put that in there as a cheat. If you're ever looking at this later and you can't remember my eloquent elucidation on this, here you go. All right, let's run it. I see we're already running it, so I need to keep going. We're going to get to wait debugger. All right, so since we're in the middle of, where are we? We're in the middle of the function because I called the function. Yep, that's where we were. The very first thing I did was test function. I called the function. We're now going to see what's in here. Okay. I kind of hate to F10 through this because it's going to be a little clunky. So hang with me, and then when I get to the end, I'm gonna run it in its entirety. So here's where we can see that the global variable is set to say I'm a global variable. The standard variable is I'm a typical script variable. Yep, that's what I wanted. And this is an explicit script variable. The standard almost threw me off there. The local variable is local variable, and the private variable is I'm a private variable. Okay. So now that I've said all that, I'm now going to say, where is private variable? Let's see where we are. PRIV tab, private variable. Okay. This knows about it. This knows that there is a private variable named private var. Okay. I just wanted to show you that. Now we're going over to the sub function scope, and notice when I hit F10 instead of F11, it just ran it. So I got my standard output of here's my line, and then my sub function variables. It knows about global, it knows about typical, it knows about explicit, it knows about local. Private variable is blank. And the reason private variable is blank is because it was instantiated in the function. So it knows it in the function scope. It does not know about it in the sub function scope. Okay, so where are we here? We're at the end. So now we're going back to the script. So now we're outside the function. Now we're at the script. Let's see what script knows about. And since this is the end, I'm just going to hit F5 so it all is easy to read. Now look. Even in VS Code, it says I'm a global, I'm a script, I'm an explicit script, local variable's gone, private variable's gone. Because local variable, where was that defined? Right here
function?
Inside the function. So when the function disposed, and we stepped out of the function and now into, let me go back to this, kind of get the idea. We've got the global scope. The script is where we're at right now. The function defined that local variable. When it stepped back up to script scope doesn't know about anything that's in these. And so it disappeared. Well, it didn't really disappear. It was just disposed because that's how PowerShell handles scopes.
Do you find yourself using private variables often?
No, I really don't. However, the fun part of a private variable is you can define a private variable in the global scope, and then here, let me bounce over here and show you this right quick. This will be fun. We'll do it live, as we say, right? Wait for my profile to load, and if I say, what do I want to do? I'm going to do new variable, and I'm going to call it live demo. Okay. And then over here in the value will be boy, just in a total brain freeze there. Text. Wow.
Creative. I like it.
Yeah. And you can put a description on this thing, but I'm not going to. And the option and the visibility. Okay, so option and visibility. We haven't covered this yet, but if I go into option, I can tell it where do I want it to go. I want this thing to be private. So that's what I'm going to do. New variable, live demo, value text. Okay. All right. So now if I do $live demo, I get the value. If I do $live and hit tab, you can't see it because I don't have the screencast available to me here. I'm pressing tab and nothing's happening because it's hidden. If you do ls variable, that's the one I want right there. Thank you. We'll get up here to the else. Interesting. So is hidden hidden? Is private private? Fascinating. So that was option private versus what was the other one I was looking at? Visibility private. Okay, so this one needs to be new live demo 2. We're going to go with text 2 because it's so clever. By the way, this live demo and my deodorant has now failed me. All right, $live D. Live demo 2 shows up because I did tab completion. LIVE tab. Live demo 2. I'm sorry, you can't access that because it is a private variable. Now, the funny part is I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, where would I use this and why would I use this? And this falls into the, I don't actually do this. Because this kind of stuff will confuse you and it'll confuse your users. However, there are definitely times at which you want your variables to either be available or not be available. Now, why did this not work? Well, it's probably because I messed this up somehow, and when I went to visibility private, there's something specific you have to do in order to get the live demos to work. Is it this? Oh, doggone it. Funny part, I don't remember. Is Justin still in the chat? He'll bail me out.
He is.
I need a bailout here.
How do we query this private variable?
Because I really can't remember. That's funny. Huh. Yeah, I don't remember.
Gilbert's LOLing. Maybe he'll give us.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Okay, well, let's cut this out of the video so that I don't look like I don't know what I'm doing. That's hilarious. Like I said, I don't ever do this, so I can't remember. But it's the difference between visibility private and the option private. So even though the option private, it was still here, but you couldn't tab complete it. See this, I find this to be odd. I don't actually do that. Back to my demo here, though, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to hit F5 on this. Let's see, did I change? It says I made changes to my scopes file. What changes did I make to this? Oh, yeah, I put the text on there. All right, so I'm going to do F5. I'm going to just run this again so that we can see the whole thing. And notice how I put an extra wait debugger in there because I just want to kind of burn through the whole thing and look at it running all together. So here's the function level variables. Here's the sub function level variables. It's missing the private variable because that was defined at the function level. And then when you get back to the script scope, local and private are now gone. If you do the same thing over here in our shell, this would be number 3. I'm going to hit C for continue and C continue again. And notice how this one comes out the same.
Judd, I got the syntax.
You got the syntax. Let's hear it.
Dot, space, curly bracket. And then $, whatever the private variable name is. So live demo 2. And then close it. Boom. I think that should do it.
Huh.
Grody for the win. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so that is very interesting.
Dot sourcing the script basically overrides the protection, Justin Grody says.
Makes sense. Okay. All right, very good. Now, to give myself a little bit of credit, that is not very intuitive. But
certainly not.
Dot sourcing is something everyone here who's done anything with functions may be familiar with, because if you run a function, just a plain old function code, and you run it in here, like if you just said my function .ps1 and it was a true function, when you run it, it's going to run and do nothing, right? Especially if it doesn't have any actions in it because you're loading a function, okay? That is going to do nothing. So what we do instead is we do this. Oops, misspelled. I'm making this up because I don't actually have a my function. We dot source it. What that does is that loads it into the current scope and keeps it around. That's what this is doing. It's saying, okay, go into the current scope and go find me this variable that you set visibility to private to. Excellent. Okay. Yet again, why it's so handy to have people like Justin around. Wealth of knowledge. Love it.
For sure.
Even if you do sit on the front row and make him repeat dad jokes into his stream. There's an inside joke for you. Moving on to scopes number 4. We're getting close to the end here. Okay, so what is this one doing? Let's get this out of the way so we can see the code. All right, so what we're doing is doing my standard weight debugger because I like to put that in there so I get consistent results. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the scope modifier for what we're about to do. Now, I'll explain it in a minute, but let's start with our developers. So our developers, we're starting with an array of text, and our string array is Dillinger and Allen. And then we're defining this variable that says, I fight for the users. That's what Tron does. He fights for the users. And then we have job 1, and we're going to start this job, and the name will be developer 0. So the first one will be Dillinger. And we have a script block that says the program says, and then we say Tron. And so now we're going to start a background job after that. And the background job says, okay, we're going to do the same basic thing, except this one will be developer 1, and that'll be Alan. And the program says using Tron. Okay. Then we do get job. And then we're going to go through the jobs and we're going to clear them up and clean them up. All right, let's step through this thing. I talked through it. Now we're going to step through it. So we defined our developers. We defined Tron. I love how this thing just pops up over here again. And now we're going to do job 1. So job 1 just started, and it said, okay, the program says Tron. And then we're going to do job 2, and this one's doing using Tron. And now we're going to do get job. Okay, so here they are, and they have completed, and they have their content. So here's what I'm doing next, and I thought this was clever, so I put it in here. I'm doing a ranged array from 1 to 2, and then I'm saying for each object, I want you to write the host, the job number result in cyan new line, and then I do a receive job on the get variable job with the number that's coming through the pipeline and get the value and tell it to wait on that receive job. Okay, so what does that look like? Oh, this is kind of cool. Let's check it out. And then I clean up the jobs, remove the jobs, Dillinger and Allen. Notice how they're named Dillinger and Allen. By the way, if you're doing jobs and you name them, it makes it a lot easier to clean them up and not wreck someone else's job by just doing a remove job star. That's a jobs pro tip for you. Okay, finishing out. Get that cleaned up. Now, what happened here? The job 1 result, the program says nothing. So Dillinger doesn't know how to use Tron. And job 2 result, the program says, I fight for the users. Now, why? When you're doing a start job, you're basically creating an entirely new threaded process of PowerShell. And that PowerShell has its own scope. It is not accepting the scope from your current code. Okay. And because of that, it doesn't know about Tron. That's why this one here in the script block, notice here's the script block, the program says Tron. There is no $Tron because I defined $Tron in my script. That's where PowerShell has this concept of using. And what using does is whenever you're doing remoting or you're doing threading and you're creating a new either remote session, remote shell, or you're doing the PowerShell shell sessions in thread job or some kind of run space, if you use using, it'll pass it through and the remote system knows, oh, I need to go up one and go find this variable that I have. And that's why in the output down here, the job 2 result is I fight for the users. Okay. Any questions on using?
I did not see any. I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Well, that was 4A. So if we're going to do 4A, we got to do 4B. And so now here's another option. In PowerShell 7, or was it 6, they added parallel to for each object. It's really cool. It'll speed up your for eaches. It does threading built in, so you don't have to do any of the run space factory or any of that stuff, which used to be challenging, but thank you to all the developers who did hard work and got that easy for us. This is great. I love it. And so it'll make your for eaches fast, especially if you got a bunch of them and you're doing some fairly decent computation. However, because it does for each parallel, it's starting a new thread for each one of those. Now, we just saw in the last one in the start jobs that those have their own context. Well, for each parallel does too. So we're going to take a look at that. So this time we're going to do greeting. Hello, my fellow programmer. And we have names, Kevin, Alan, and Laura. And so example number 1, well, let's just run it and walk through it. Here we go. Oh, well, did I not put a right... For crying out loud, I didn't put a wait debugger at the top of this one. Woo! Oh, I'm glad Jeffrey Snower is not the only flawed individual who runs PowerShell.
That's right, we all are.
Grief. So now I have to talk through it again because, all right, ignore all the stuff down here. Names. We're going to go through each of our names, and for each object, we're going to say greeting, blah, and note that it's sequential because that's what these are. So if you were cheating and you watched, here's the sequentials down here: Kevin, Alan, and Laura. And these will be in order every time because they're in order here in the array and they're being passed across the pipeline. Okay, so that works. So now we do names for each parallel. And this time I threw in a start sleep seconds, get random minimum 0, maximum 5 to kind of be like, okay, we don't actually know how quickly these will get done. So I put some jank in there to simulate like it's doing some work. Thus, pound simulate some work. And so this says access the parent variable using, but I didn't. And so then if you saw it, it doesn't know about hello, my fellow programmer, because the greeting was defined up here in the script scope, and these threads don't know anything about it. But if you put the using on there, then it does work, and you get hello, my fellow programmer. Now notice Kevin, Alan, Laura, Alan, Kevin, Laura. These, and then Kevin, Laura, Alan, these are not numbered the same. The first ones will always be numbered the same. The second ones will move around, and I'll prove it. I'll either prove it or I'll prove that I'm a liar by running it again. It's funny if it randoms to 5 a couple of times, because then it makes your script pause and whatever deodorant you may have had left will just exit the building. Okay, any questions on that?
I think we're good.
We're good. Okay, so point is, if you use for each object parallel and you're getting some odd results, make sure that if you're passing a variable across, or if what's being computed in your for each object parallel needs something from the parent scope, then you use the using and it'll pull that across for you. All right, we're into the finals. And the final is very simple. Get help about scopes. Now, I've been talking for about 50 minutes-ish on scopes, and frankly, I've given you some decent information on it, but there's more, okay? There is a concept of module scopes, and the module scopes is fun, and I talk a little bit about scopes and remoting, but since I'm on a single machine that doesn't have remote systems, it's hard to do remoting. But if you're using invoke command, then you need to understand that invoke command is opening a remote session either over WinRM or SSH, depending upon how you've configured it. And if you're doing that, you're getting serialized and deserialized objects back, and it's either hydrating or dehydrating them on demand. Now, if none of this makes sense to you, then guess what? You have to do what my shirt says, which is go learn some more about PowerShell. Because if at first you don't succeed, try again. Those scopes and remoting. And then, honestly, there's even more. The about scopes help is actually quite large. Let's see. Can I just run this? Get help about scopes. Did it work? What did it do? Run. Oh, it's still running. did I not finish my last script? I may not have ever finished my last script. And so it just never ran the end of 4B. And so that's what it was doing. I hadn't closed it out. Remember me talking about flaws? Yes, I'm flawed. Okay. The about scope. Here it is. There is some stuff in here on about scope. I'm just scrolling. I'm not expecting you to read backwards. Okay. When I said there's a lot in here, there's a lot in here. This is a lot. By the way, there was the module scope. Here's sessions. Here's modules. It explains some business about modules and why you have to actually export your module member in order for your parent scope to see what's in the module scope. Okay, I gave you a little taste. If we want more information, I can come back and we can do a little more presentation on that. And that's really the presentation that I have. I appreciate the opportunity, Andrew. Thank you. And any questions or final comments?
I think one final comment that I saw that got some recognition in chat was from Justin Grody. Surprise. Was the biggest takeaway should be, because someone was mentioning they were a little confused and having trouble conceptualizing scopes because they're a little bit newer to PowerShell. The biggest takeaway should be always initialize your variables or use parameters wherever possible, and you can avoid 99% of scope issues.
Yes. Okay, so along that line, I'm just going to do that. Again, we're doing things live, right? And
we're doing live, baby.
I'm just going to create a function that calls get files. Okay, this is going to be an exceptionally simple function. Here's Copilot trying to help me out. And all I'm going to do from this is do get child item from path, current path. This is my function. Okay, I'm working on this function. I'm trying to learn PowerShell, or I'm trying to do something in PowerShell. And this is how I code. I do not generally write scripts, because scripts, if you take the Don Jones approach to it, you have controller scripts and then you have functions. And the controller scripts do your business logic. I want you to go get a user. I want you to go update that user's email address. I want you to then send an email, and then I want you to export that out to a log file. That's your business logic. And then each one of those tasks in there has a function that is for said business logic. So when I'm doing them and I'm working on them, in order to keep from polluting my scope, and I've used this again on purpose, I'm going to do pollution equals yuck. I don't want null. I want pollution equals yuck. Okay, I'm defining this script in my function. And then when I'm testing this, or I want this to run as a script, I will do get files here. Actually, I forgot something very basic, but I do it constantly with my stuff. I put my initials on them so that I know it's mine. Now, if I run this, I just got my files, okay? But if I go down here and I do $pollution, let's see what happens. Tab, 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 tab. It's not there because it was inside the function. And so as soon as it got outside the function, it stopped, or it disposed of it. Excuse me. So I'm going to do one more thing to this just to prove it. Let's see, I don't want it there. I want it here. We will do wait debugger. Now we'll run it. Goes there. By the way, I could have just highlighted this line and done F9 so it would put a breakpoint on there. I do it this way. It's just kind of a habit I've fallen into. So I'm going to F11 on wait debugger. I'm going to do get child item. I'm going to do pollution equals yuck. I haven't stepped out of the function yet. So if I go down here and I do pollution, tab, I have it. As soon as I press F11, I'm now out of there. $POLL tab, and it's gone. This is the way that I avoid pollution in my VS Code editor, and I find it works very well for me. And this this right here will turn into my business logic. And at the end, I just call the business logic. Be like, hey, what I want you to do is go run through this thing. There you go.
Awesome. And a lot of these demos are made possible by the debugger, allowing us to kind of be inside the function, see things there, then step out and view things outside in a different scope.
Yep. Like, for example, I can go over here and do, we'll say, we'll just do X scopes bonus round. I'll save that out there. And then I can go over here and do X, oops, I'm in the wrong window, X tab bonus round. Because I did wait debugger, I get the exact same thing here. I can say, all right, well, show me where you are on this. You're on this wait debugger. I can do C for continue, and zoop, there it goes. This is another reason why I like to use wait debugger, because I can still go to the console and debug. You can also debug code that's running remotely that you only have SSH access to, and you can't attach VS Code for whatever reason. Now, yes, I know you can do SSH streaming through VS Code, and you can do a VS Code server on the remote and do that over SSH. I do that all the time. I even do that to my local WSL instances running Ubuntu. It's very useful. I love it. But there are times at which the only way you can get something is to do it interactively on a shell, and this is how I can troubleshoot.
Awesome. Fantastic presentation today, good sir.
Thank you very much. By the way, did everyone notice my hat?
People wanted to know where they could get it, actually. Horst was mentioning that.
Oh, yeah. If you go to store.stevenjudd.com, I have a place where you can get things like my shirt and my hat. I've been putting some of my designs out there. And just to be clear, all proceeds from those sales go to kind of pay me back for all the stuff I've handed out over the past few years, and so that I can hand out even more. I would love nothing more than to be able to afford everything for free, not for free. I'll be able to afford everything for everyone who would like one. I would love to send out hats, but unfortunately, last time I checked, I wasn't made of money. And once I get there, you all will have a hat in the mail.
Awesome. Well, hopefully if somebody wins the lottery, they'll hook you up and give you a little swag budget.
Oh yeah, I could use a swag budget. Yeah. I'm doing this all self-funded. So if you see me at a conference, I paid to be there. If you see me handing out stuff, I paid for that. So, anybody who's buying my stuff is helping me fund that in the future, and that's it. And if there's any designs or anything you see that are missing from my store that you've ever seen from me, then let me know and I'll get it. I'll try and get it out there for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody out there for checking us out at PowerShell Wednesday every single Wednesday. I can't believe it's already May. We've been doing them every single Wednesday this entire year. Have not missed a single one.
It's June.
Oh, it's June. Yes. Ha ha ha. Whenever you gave me that look, I was like, oh no, am I muted right now? It's preaching to the ether. But thanks everybody for joining. We're here all the time, every single Wednesday. Check out the YouTubes. Follow Steven Judd on social. Steven, where can we find you? We dig the jokes. We're trying to catch that vibe more often.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah, so I'm at Steven Judd everywhere I could grab it. I didn't get it on Discord, so there I'm at Judd Missile. But I'm at Steven Judd on X, at Steven Judd on Blue Sky, at Steven Judd on LinkedIn. I think I'm at Steven Judd, but it's definitely Steven Judd. And if you go to YouTube and you search for Steven Judd, you will not get me because someone else with my name is more popular than me, and you might be a little confused if you saw it. So all you have to do is add PowerShell. So search for Steven Judd PowerShell on YouTube, and you can see a bunch of my stuff that's out there. However, if you want the curated list, all you have to do is go to shortcutyour.life, and .life is the top level domain name. So shortcutyour.life, and that'll take you to my content page, which is hosted on my blog.
Boom. All angles. And I'll be getting you on the PowerShell podcast here in the next week or two. So check out that. If you're watching this on YouTube, check the show notes down below. We're going to have some links to his stuff, to his code, all the good things. Steven Judd, you're a legend. Thank you for joining us. Thank you out there for watching us. If you're joining us live or on YouTube after the fact, give us a like, comment, subscribe. So maybe you will be the one that pops up. Because wouldn't that be good for PowerShell? Get some Judd love going on.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.